Okay, so Beyn Ha Arbayim, in the context of Exodus 12, when they were leaving Egypt during the Passover. This is a teaching that a few weeks ago I started, but it was at that time inconclusive in some areas and some aspects, but through some additional studies and through praying, I was able to bring a more comprehensive understanding of what this word means, or at least not the word, but the phrase, Beyn Ha Arbayim. So I hope that you all are blessed by it, and also if you may have seen this, if you may have seen portions of this a few weeks ago, I will review some slides. Some slides I redid, and I added additional slides, so to just give you a more comprehensive understanding of this word. I'm sorry, this phrase. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so we have Beyn Ha Arbayim, between the mixings of the light and the darkness. Now, what is this phrase and what does it mean exactly? Well, this phrase would have to be divided if we are to truly comprehend it, meaning we have to divide each word individually to grasp each word's meaning, so we can then put it together and then see it through the context of the biblical narrative. Now, the Hebrew word pronounced Beyn Ha Arbayim in its literal sense means between two mixtures. It is rare that you find the complete definition of this phrase consulting a biblical concordance, such as the Strong's or a Hebrew lexicon, as they only list individual words and not phrases. To understand this phrase, we need to look at the definition of each word that this phrase, Beyn Ha Arbayim, is composed of, and then we can construct a weighted conclusion based on the scriptural evidence we find. The structure of the Hebrew text is not explained in concordance and lexicons. This information can be found normally in books on the Hebrew grammar or a syntax. Sorry. Now, we're going to break down this word to get a clear understanding of how it is applied in scriptures. The phrase Beyn Ha Arbayim is defined as between the evenings or mixings. Now, Beyn, which is Strong's H996, is broken down in Hebrew as, in the consonants as Beyn Ha. Beit Yod Nun. So Beit Yod Nun means between. It's a Hebrew preposition. And then after this word, you have the word in Hebrew Hey, which means the. It's a definite article that means the. And then you have the word EREB or Arba, and then Yim, okay, which is a Hebrew Strong 6153, and this word is in consonants. The letters are Ayin, Resh, Bet, Yod, Mem. It means evenings or mixings. The Yod and the Mem at the end, the last two consonants, is what makes it a plural. Like if I were to say in a singular sense, angel in Hebrew, I would say a cherub. Or if I were to say it in a plural sense, I would say cherubim. Okay. And now in this word, arbayim, we can conclude that there are two mixtures of, or two twilights. So it's not just one mixture or one evening. It's a plural. Okay. Now, to complete the complete word dictionary on the Old Testament defines the term Beyn Ha Arbayim as between the evenings, that is at dusk or at twilight. Okay. Now, the definition of the Hebrew words Beyn, H996, and EREB, H6153, are the two words that we're going to go ahead and look and study more. Let's take a closer look at these two Hebrew words and define them based on these prominent Hebrew dictionaries and lexicons. Beyn, H996. In the Strong, it is defined as between, betwixt, and I'll just go over the ones that are more prevalent. It also means within or between, okay? And then we have the Gesenius lexicon, which is an interval, a space between time, space between, within, like an interval of sound. Like for those who study music, you know what that means. It's some notes have long intervals and some notes have short intervals, a short amount of time. Okay, so this word is used to distinguish two different things that are separated by something, as in between two things. As in Proverbs 6:19, between brothers, Job 30:7, between the eyes, Malachi 3:18, you shall see the difference between the righteous and the wicked. Or we see it being used within occupying between two things, like in Job 24:11, within the walls, or Proverbs 26:13, within the streets. Okay. And as we get into these latter days, we can really start living out Malachi 3:18. You shall see the difference between the righteous and the wicked. All right. So we have here on the World Study Dictionary of the Old Testament, a noun used as a preposition that means between, among, in the midst. It means literally between two things. Genesis 15:17. It indicates that something is within a certain area. Proverbs 26:13. And Nehemiah 5:18, it means interval, marking a period of 10 days, indicating a lapse of time. Just in the case of Nehemiah, it is signifying a marking of time between two periods. As we go into the study, we will go over how this word, meaning between, aligns with the word EREB, or mixing, will help us understand what happened during the Passover at the Exodus. Now, the second word that we're looking at here is the word EREB, 6153. And the Gesenius lexicon, it simply means evening. In this context, it also can mean foreign or strangers. Arbayim, okay, means the two evenings. Okay, Beyn Ha Arbayim means between the two evenings, as such as in Exodus 16:12 or 38, used as a marking the space of time to which the Passover lamb was slain. And that's the one we're going to be studying, Exodus 12:6. Okay. Now, although this is true, the translators did not consider that Arab or EREB in its proper context can also mean between two mixes. Okay. Now, in the Strong's definition, a primitive root, rather identical with H6148, through the idea of covering with texture, to grow dusky at sundown, be darkened towards evening. Strong does not have a listing of, the full phrase of Beyn Ha Arbayim. That's why you would need a syntax or a grammar book to help you with that. All these occurrences of the phrase are accordingly listed under the noun EREB. Now, the word EREB in its purest form without vowel points is ayin resh bet. And so we have those three consonants. Now, we're going to look at the etymological dictionary of Biblical Hebrew to help us understand the root and the significance of this word EREB. Well, in its purest form, it reads, mixed substances with no charge in character, penetrate with foreign matter. Kind of like you have a light and darkness. So there's a penetration of two different substances being combined, right? So you can visually picture that. And then you have a mixing without being integrated. A darkening, right? So if there is a darkening, obviously there had to be some light before, right? Being pleasant, being between lender and borrower. The fifth definition is evening, mixed shades of light, right? So different mixed shades of light. And then you have twilight, and then you have rabble, mixed multitude. So you have definitions 5 and 6 are pretty close to what we're going to, actually they are online with what we're going to be studying and how this word EREB is going to be translated in the word Beyn Ha Arbayim. Now, these are the root words that are related to the Hebrew word EREB, which is the last word in the phrase Beyn Ha Arbayim. I did a study on this not long ago that gave you a little bit more detail about the breakdown of this word, okay, of the word EREB. So, and that's in the teaching of the evening. But at least I want to give you a really quick review because it's very important for you to grasp this to understand how this phrase is applied in the scriptures. So we're going to go ahead and break down 3 words. And also know that those who have been studying Hebrew or at least know some basic components of each word is the fact that each Hebrew word comes from a root word, and that root word is always, not sometimes, always a verb. So when we speak Hebrew, it's almost like Yahuwah is awesome that he made a language that invokes an action. So every single word that we speak in Hebrew, it was developed by an action. So that is who we have as a father, and that's who we have as a Mashiach. They are of action. They are doing things, okay? And so when his word, moves us, it's literally moving us inside, changes our molecules, everything, so it's a blessing. So what we have here is the first word is the word Arab, 6148, to mix, to braid, to intermix, to mingle. The primitive root defines any type of mixing and twilights, whether it is in the morning or the evening. Even though it is more commonly used in the evening, this root word can describe the twilight that is found in the morning as well. Jusenius lexicon defines it as mixed, to exchange, to become surety, to pledge, or to give in pledge. Okay, so that is this word here, which is a verb. And the word EREB in the word Beyn Ha Arbayim comes from this word, which means to mix. But it also comes from another verb, which is very rare in Hebrew, that one word has 2 root words. But this one actually does, the word EREB, which means evening. So the second root word here is 6150. Okay. And now this means to set as the sun, the primitive root identical with 6148 through the idea of converting with texture. The root word indicates that there is a twilight as the night approaches dusk. The 2 verbs are root words for evening. Each root word corresponds to a different twilight. Okay. This one here, Arab 6148, can be a mixing of the, in the morning time, or it can be a mixing during the evening time. So it could be both. So whereas Arab 6150 is, as you can see, is when the sun sets. So this one just applies to the evening. Okay. And then we have the, the 6151, as you can see, is to mix, to mingle, which is a primitive word of 6148. Okay. So even this word here comes from this one. I'm sorry, yeah, 6151 comes from this one. Apologize. Okay, which is another, another root word. But this is the one we're going to be mostly focused on, these 2 here, which are connected to the word evening. Okay. So We have here on number 6, we're going to go over, in this slide number 6, we're going to go over when does the dawn start as compared to the sunrise. Okay, these are two different timelines throughout the day. Now, these following biblical events that I'm going to go over will bring some clarification to when the early dawn begins as opposed to the sunrise. Now, on Lot's account, we're going to examine a very important word that is part of our covenant calendar, and that word is dawn, or shakar in Hebrew. When we look at up the Hebrew definitions, we need to look at the word we are examining when it was first mentioned, as it reveals how this word was introduced and used in its original form. This word has been introduced from the beginning to mean something in its purest form and primitive context, allowing to better interpret what it means in further uses in scriptures. This is a hermeneutic practice that can help students of the scriptures come to understanding the original significance of the word and how it is defined in a letter used in the text. This is what many call the law of first mention. If you look at some of the Hebrew hermeneutics, the law of first mention, it's a common practice. More in the Hebrew studies than you would find in, for like Christian or other type of denominations. But we are a priesthood, not a denomination. So we go into what the Bible, prescribes best. Now, this is the first time the word dawn, shakar in Hebrew, was mentioned. Now, as we study the first use, we will understand that the word dawn means in its original value, like we see on Genesis 19:15. When the morning dawned, shakar, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city." So the angels went to Lot when it was dawning. Okay, the sun was yet to be visible. And as we say on verse 20, see, the city is near enough to flee, and it is a little one. Please let us escape there. It is not a little one, and my soul shall live. And he said to him, see, I have favored you concerning this also, in that I will not overthrow the city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape, therefore I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. Verse 23, the sun had risen up the earth when Lot entered Zoar. So the sun was first not visible, and then the sun was visible. So as you can see, there is a distinction there, right? Okay, now this reveals that the sun was not visible when the morning dawn started at the break of light, when the angels told Lot to rise and escape with his wife and the 2 daughters. Since this is the first time the word shakar was mentioned, we can build a good foundation to when the dawn begins, as it is compared to the sunrise. The dawn is an event that happens before sunrise. Go to this next event. All right, so we have here the angel of Yahuwah wrestling with Jacob. Genesis 32:24 reads, then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day, dawn, shakar. Now when he saw he did not prevail against him, he touched his socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of his joint, and wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. Shakar. There's that word repeated again on verse 20, at the end of this verse 24. Then you have, verse 26 and 24. It's 24 and 26 is repeated. And then on if you forward to Genesis 32, later on this narrative, so Jacob called the name of this place Peniel. Okay, For I have seen Elohim face to face, Panaim el Panaim, and my life it is preserved. Just as he crossed over Penuel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. So we have two different timelines. Again, we have dawn was approaching, right? And then we have was probably still dark, you know, most likely, and then you have when the sun rose on him. Okay, so we see that distinction again. There's another event when the light dawn or the break of light was seen before the sunrise. So now we go to Judges 19:25. And as you recall, well, I'll read it and probably bring back what this is about. But this is Abiah's crime against the concubine, right? On Judges 19:25, but the man would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine and brought her forth unto them. And they knew her and abused her all night until the morning, and when the day began to dawn. So so we're talking dawn here, shakar, that word again, shakar. And then later on Judges 26, it reads, then came the woman at dawning, turn of dawning of the day. Okay, so they have that word translated as dawning, but it actually means turn of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where the master was, till it was light. Okay, and her master rose up in the morning and opened up the doors on the bayit. So as we can see here, the turn is kind of like, you know, the turn of the year, like equinox, or the tekufa is the turn of the year, just like the day also has a turn, is a turn of a new day. So this is also another good scripture that one can identify when a day begins, just like when a year turns from one to another, right? The turn of the year or the turn of the day. So as you can see, there was light after the dawn. And at the turn of the day is when the day commences. So this one has a double teaching on it. All right, we go here to the next slide, and we have a graph here of the Beyn Ha Arbayim. The Hebrew lexicon lets us know that there is a mixing of light and darkness when the word EREB is being used. So what we can conclude is that there must be an interval of time between 2 points where the light mixes with the darkness. The first mixing happens at dawn before the sun is even seen. And the second mixing happens as soon as the sun starts to come out of view, as it goes down at the beginning of the evening or dusk. Now, this means that there are 2 twilights in a 24-hour day. 24-hour day starts at dawn when the light starts breaking, as you can see here, right? Before you can see the sunrise, you can see the light, that's when it starts, and then all the way to the end of the night. Because the next day, this light belongs to the day part, okay? So that's why it is a 24-hour day. Okay, so now we have here 2 different, we have mixing here in the dawn, and we have a mixing here in the dusk, and over and over and over, right? So we do have 2 Beyn Ha Arbayims, one between the mixing during the daytime, and one between the mixing during the nighttime. So we have here 2 circumstances where this word, as we go into further scriptures, will be applied and will be proven through the context of each event. Okay. The first event we're going to go through is the Passover. Okay. Beyn Ha Arbayim is mentioned 11 times. So we're going to go one by one, just with a concise explanation to these. So the first one is the Exodus 12 account, Passover lamb when they were leaving Egypt, and Yahuwah, commanded them to go inside their households, don't come out, sacrifice the lamb between the evenings, between the mixtures, and then eat it, and then have your staff and your shoes ready and all of that. So there was a lot of commandments on this actual event as they were leaving Egypt. Okay, so we have here on Exodus 12:6, and you shall keep it up until 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the twilights or mixtures, right? So we have here the Passover. Now the term Passover could be defined 4 different ways. One, it can mean Passover sacrifice. That's when the lamb was to be slaughtered. Second way is the Passover meal during the nighttime. And throughout Scripture, we see the Passover meal is always done at night. The third is the Passover feast. That's the component of the 24-hour feast that starts basically, at the end of the 13th day, and it starts at dawn on the 14th. It is a full 24-hour feast. Or it's a full 24-hour Passover feast, even though you don't get to eat until nighttime. Now this would indicate that the Passover is basically 24 hours. And fourth, the Passover as a festival which includes Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, as it is described in some cases in the Synoptic Gospels, where they were able to say, well, the Passover feast is coming, but they were actually discussing it in a whole, 2 components into one. So, and then we have on this verse here, okay, this Passover was eaten, is always eaten at night, okay, and there's no doubt about it all throughout Scripture. The Passover always was eating in the evening. Now, during the Exodus was a different type of Passover than you're going to see throughout later in the Scriptures. This Passover lamb was sacrificed and eating at night. Well, there's a lot of reasons why this was. Now, between these 2 mixtures during the night, just like in Psalms 104:23, it reads, "Man goes out to work and to his labor until evening." We have to remember that the Egyptians had Israel working during the daytime hours, so it would have been very, very unlikely for them to let them go, basically halfway throughout the day or whatever, so they could do this. They had to labor. As you can remember, they were going through a lot of harsh labor, and that's the reason why Yahuwah was making them, he answered their prayers and helped them, with taking to the promised land. And so, so it's very unlikely for them to have been able to sacrifice a lamb during this regular labor hours. The nighttime would have been the only time they could have slaughtered the lamb and not been seen by the Egyptians. The Egyptians were known to worship animals as well, and this probably would have raised a commotion. They were commanded also by Yahuwah to stay indoors and not come out. They didn't have much time, as you can see, based on the context of their Passover meal. As you recall, Yahuwah said, "So you shall eat it in haste." It is Yahuwah's Passover. So everything was done in a crunch amount of time. They were wide awake all throughout the night, preparing the Passover. They had to put the blood on the doorpost. They had their sandals on their feet, the staff on their hands. So, I mean, they had to do everything in a very short amount of time. And part of that was, so there was no detection. There was no alarm that would leave in peace without a fight, with a battle. Okay. So we have here on the next verse here is Leviticus 23:5. On the 14th day of the first month between the twilights is Yahuwah's Passover. The sacrificial rites of the yearly sacrifice can be done between the mixings of the daytime, as we already know. They can be between the mixings of the nighttime. Later, we will see that the ordinances can be performed not only during the day or the night, but at evening as well. Now, how do we know this? Did Moshe allow a lamb to be sacrificed at different times of the day on a 24-hour day? Well, we'll surely have the answer for you during this presentation. On Numbers 9:3, this is on the 14th day of this month, between the twilights, you shall keep the appointed season according to all the rites in it and according to the ceremonies thereof. Shall you keep it? These were the Passover statutes needed to keep once you enter into Canaan. So these were the statutes that they needed once they entered the land of Canaan. Okay. In these next two verses is going to be more specifically about, eating the actual Passover in the evening, right? So we have here Numbers 9:5 and 9:11. And they kept Passover on the 14th day of the first month between the twilights in the wilderness of Sinai, according to Yahuwah commanded Moshe, so did the children of Israel. The 14th day of the second month of between the twilights, they shall keep it and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. So obviously he's talking about eating the Passover with the unleavened bread, and this obviously cannot be done during the daytime. This can only be done in the evening. Next here we have the quails. Were given to Israel. Okay, I'm going to read Exodus 16:12. Okay, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, between the twilights you shall eat the flesh, and in the mornings you shall be filled with the bread, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. The quail was given to them because the mixture, but closer to the evening. So they gathered the quail, prepared and ate it before dawn, which means that this Beyn Ha Arbayim happened also during the nighttime. On the next verse, it shows that the quails came up at evening, meaning dusk, not between the mixtures. Okay, so if the quails came at evening, it is only logical to conclude that during the night season is actually when they ate it. It's right after that. Okay, and the next verse, it actually testifies to that, which reads, and it came to pass that at evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and the morning dew lay around about the host. So as you can see here, it was at evenings. Okay, and that covered the camp. So they had to eat it after that. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not really sure why I can't go back. Oh, I can do it like this. I could do that. All right, just learned something new. Okay, so now we have the daily offering. Now this was a daily offering. Even during Shabbats, they used to sacrifice 2 lambs, right? So for those who say that no work could be done, well, the priest had to sacrifice 2 lambs on Shabbat because Yahuwah's commandments for the priest came first. Okay, but then we have the perfect example of what this truly means to be able to be a self-sacrificial person for the congregation. So then we had the daily sacrifices, daily offerings on Exodus 29. The one lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer between the twilights. Again, the same thing you'll read on 41 and then 48, and that's Numbers 28:4. The lamb shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer between twilights. And then Numbers 28:8. Again, it says that a lamb shall be offered between twilights. So you have a lamb that was offered in the morning, okay, and then one between the mixings, right? So there were 2 lambs, and the other lamb, you know, could have possibly been offered around noon, 1 o'clock, around there, you know, because that one was already a second lamb that was to be sacrificed between the daylight. Okay, and this happened before the evening. Now, we have also the Aaron lights. Okay. Oh, by the way, the second lamb was dedicated for the consecration of the Aaronic priests. So there was a purpose for each lamb and for the reason why it's being sacrificed. So you have here the Aaron lighted up the incense lamps. So just to give you a little bit of context, even though the between the mixings is on Exodus 30, verse 8, I'll start off with the verse before because it'll give you some context. And Aaron shall burn on it sweet incense every morning when he prepares the lamps. He shall burn incense upon it. And then on the next verse, and when Aaron lighteth the lamp between the mixtures at twilight, he shall burn incense upon it, a perpetual incense before Yahuwah throughout your generations. Okay, so if we see on verse 7 that he was burning incense every morning, and on verse 8 it reads, Aaron lighteth the lamps between the mixtures, he shall burn the incense upon it. Well, obviously he was also lighting the lamps during the mixing of the day, right? So the mixings, but during the daytime. Okay, so that's further proof. So now we have. So as you can see now, there's a variation. There's a mixing between the in the nighttime. There's a between the mixings in the daytime. So there's both, right? There was a morning and evening worship that came along with this. This is a good witness that proves that the light of the lamps were a necessary tool, so the incense would burn. If Aaron needed to burn the incense in the morning, he needed to light the lamps at that time as well. So the mixture in this context is a mixture during the daytime. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and inspect a little closer Deuteronomy 16. And this is going to answer that question I asked earlier, that the Yahuwah commanded Moshe to sacrifice the lamb at different times. And that's the Passover lamb. Well, we'll find out. Now, according to Moshe, there were 3 different times, as you will soon find out, in the 24-hour day when the Passover lamb was allowed to be sacrificed. In Deuteronomy 16:5, it reads, you may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, but at the place where Yahuwah your Elohim chooses to make his name abide. There you shall sacrifice the Passover at twilight. And now this word twilight is H6153. This is not Beyn Ha Arbayim. Okay, this is just twilight or evening. Okay. At the going down of the sun, or at the time season you came out of Egypt. So we have here 3 different times. At twilight, this is just to remind you, at twilight does not mean Beyn Ha Arbayim. If you look at it on the Hebrew, it's just the word Hebrew EREB, which is 6153. Okay. What pertains more to the, and in the next chart, you'll find out that what pertains more to the between the evenings would be the next 2 verses, and you'll see in just a moment. Now, his name may abide. Where is Yahuwah's name prophesied to abide? Okay, this was a prophecy that was written before conquering the land of Canaan, establishing a place where Yahuwah's name would dwell. The name of Yahuwah was eventually dedicated to the temple in Jerusalem, as you can read here in 1 Kings 8:16 through 21. Since the day that I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have chosen no city from any tribe of Israel in which to build a house, that my name might be there. But I choose David to be over my people Israel. It was in the heart of David to build a temple, but it was passed on to his son Solomon to have it built, right? Conrad did a really nice teaching on this. I recommend you all watch it in regards to the temple in Jerusalem. And this was during the reign of this next verse, Second Chronicles. It's about during the reign of King Josiah, around 624 BC. There was a Passover allowing the lambs to be sacrificed from the day all the way through the evening into the night. And as you can testify here on 2 Chronicles 35, and afterwards they prepare for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering the burnt offerings and the fat parts until night. So the Levites prepared for themselves and the priests and the sons of Aaron. All right, and King Josiah was he was actually getting the instructions from the Torah of Moshe. Okay, to be able to do it correctly. So of course he's not going to be sacrificing at nighttime unless Torah said it was okay, right? So we have here on verse 12, I'm sorry, slide 12. Sorry about that. This is the graph here that can give you at least an illustration of when Deuteronomy 16, 5 through 6 allows or allowed them to make that sacrificial gift. There are three different types. One was able to sacrifice, three different timelines. When one was able to sacrifice, and later on I will provide additional proof that Yahusha fulfilled all three statutes during his crucifixion. So Yahusha fulfilled this later on, you'll see. So we have here at the going down of the sun, okay, and the going down of the sun, okay. And this was very common that they actually did their sacrifices, as you'll know in a few, after around noontime or after. Okay, now it is between, the mixtures, right? It's actually right perfectly in between if you want to consider it that way. So that's one way to interpret what we're actually seeing here. The at twilight, so we see here 61:53 dusk, and then at the season you shall come up out of Egypt, nighttime. Okay, so at twilight, remember, this is not Beyn Ha Arbayim, this is just the word EREB, evening. So it was okay to sacrifice in the evening, and it was okay to do it at this season when they came out of Egypt, which was in the nighttime. When they did that sacrifice, that special in a rush Passover. I hope you all are following this. We won't have much time for questions because this teaching is a little long and Brandon has to get to his. Well, I think I may be able to answer some questions after this, if anybody has any questions. So, but I won't have much time, just want to give you a heads up. So I'll try to go through this as quick as I can. So we have here through the KARAITES, Samaritans, Rabbinic, and Pharisees, what was their interpretation of Beyn Ha Arbayim? So we have here on the Gesenius lexicon, according to the opinion of the KARAITES and Samaritans, which is favored by the words of Deuteronomy 16:6, which is what we just went over, the time between sunset and deep twilight. Okay. Now that would be around here, and I don't think that would actually work, right? Now the Pharisees, however, and as you can see, as I read through this, you're going to see that there are so many different, and these are many are Hebrew scholars, that put so much time and effort into reading the Torah and all that, and there's such a division on this phrase. It's amazing that I don't think they're very that don't agree, for the most part. So the Pharisees, however, And the rabbinics consider the time when the sun began to descend to be called the first evening, little evening, right? So that would be the zenith. That would be around right here. So it started to descend. So that is, you know, in the context of, you know, 16:6, as the sun starts going down, right, from the highest point, starts going down. That would be one way to interpret it. And then you have the rabbinic and Pharisaic opinion, which is the Beyn Ha Arbayim, is the period of time before sunset. Has been for centuries honored as a fundamental teaching of Judaism. As a result of this interpretation of Beyn Ha Arbayim, until the destruction of the Second Temple, many Jews killed their Passover lambs late on the afternoon of the 14th, practicing with the priests and Levites in traditional sacrifices of Passover. Josephus, which is a Hellenistic Jew, you know, very really awesome historian. He also gives us his words. Josephus gives the account of the temple sacrifice of the Passover lamb. So these high priests, upon coming on the feast, which is called Passover, when they slay their sacrifices from the 9th hour to the 11th, which is that's a Hebrew term, 9th hour to 11th, which translates to our current calendar today as 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And he also, Josephus also added that during his lifetime, he found the number of sacrifices to be 256,500 in Jerusalem. Okay. So one of the biggest things here that it's hard for them to reconcile how they can fulfill Torah and have a Passover meal on Aviv 14th. It would be virtually impossible if their day ends after evening, because that means that after this nighttime was already the 15th. So that means that their 14th started at night here, then at the 14th daytime, and then, so when are they going to have Passover? On the 15th? So, you know, so it kind of falls flat on their face. I mean, when it comes to that, you know, and just light things that are misinterpreted because of Babylonian practices, right? Of moon worship and all this stuff. But we can see the fingerprints on here. And now we have the Sadducees interpretation, the Eliot's commentary for English readers. According to the Sadducees, it denotes the time between the settings of the sun and the moment when the stars become visible, or when darkness sets in, between 6 and 7 o'clock, a space of about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Okay. And then according to the Pharisees, however, between the two evenings means from the afternoon to the disappearing of the sun. So afternoon, disappearing of the sun. The first evening is from the time when the sun begins to decline towards the west, whilst the second is goes down and vanishes out of sight. This is the reason why the Passover lamb in the evening sacrifice began to be killed in the blood sprinkled at 12:30 p.m. This is more in harmony with the fact that a large number of sacrifices on this day could have been offered up in a longer period of time. Okay. So, and now this is just some other scholars and Jewish and rabbinic interpretation. So we have here other rabbinic sources take Beyn Ha Arbayim to mean from noon on. According to Radak, the first setting occurs when the sun passes the zenith just after. So the zenith would be right here when the sun is at its highest point, and then it starts descending. And the shadows begin to lengthen, and the second setting is the actual sunset. And Rashi writes in his commentary about the usage of the term Beyn Ha Arbayim, which is Exodus 12:6. At dusk from the 6th hour or afternoon, and upwards is called Beyn Ha Arbayim, when the sun declines towards the space of its setting to be darkened. And the expression Beyn Ha Arbayim appears in my sight to refer to those hours between evening of day and evening of night. So there's two evenings, right? There's like a little evening and regular evening, right? So you see that it being used again. Evening of the day, beginning on the 7th hour, 1 p.m. Again, there's a time difference here. Okay, so you have some at 12:30, some at noon, some at 1 o'clock, some at 3 o'clock. So the shadow of the evening or stretched out in the evening is at the beginning of night. And you have another Kabbalist, Jew. I'm not saying you should believe any Kabbalist because they believe they really put the Talmud over the Torah. So I'm very cautious about um, you know learning from them. But I like to glean to see what some of these opinions are. So you have Rabbi Arin Kaplan promotes a traditional definition of Beyn Ha Arbayim as the afternoon of the 14th. Here is the translation: holding in safekeeping until the 14th day of this month. The entire community of Israel shall then slaughter in the afternoon. Again, you see this again. You see that the sacrifice is done right at the end of, according to them, is the 14th because their 14th ends right here. Then they're gonna basically miss the Torah. They're not gonna fulfill it in the way that it was written, right? Um, so what we have here is the different Bible interpretations, okay, of Exodus 12:6. The Restoration Scripture is one of my favorite ones. It has it here between the evenings, Hebrew Beyn Ha Arbayim, and the Tanakh, the Stone Edition, and they have it slaughtered in the afternoon. Again, they're taking that position that is between the mixing during the day, and then you have between the setting of times with the shakat. So this one is, more literal or this one is more literal, but you need to understand that the evening part is the part where needed to be retranslated in some cases, right? Young literal translation is also between the evenings, okay? Now, there are some biblical interpretations that have interpreted the word EREB to mean evening or setting of times, as you can see. They are both incorrect from their preconceived notion that there is only one type of mixture and not reconciling for the rest of the Torah, such as when the quail was given to Israel to be eaten during the nighttime, or when they were commanded to eat Passover with unleavened bread, as mentioned on Leviticus 9:11, between the mixings of the nighttime. This term can obviously be used for a day and night, okay? But they have it interpreted one stroke brush, meaning the same thing all throughout. Okay, so the Passover event during the Exodus. Now, in order to understand the exact time of the day on the 14th that the lamb were to be slain, we need to determine the scriptural meaning of the phrase Beyn Ha Arbayim in the way that it has been revealed throughout the study. The Hebrew phrase reveals the specific time of the day that the Passover was to begin. First, let us examine the commandments were required in order to have had the Passover lamb ready for this feast. Okay, so we have in the first verse we went over, you shall kill it between the mixtures, between the evening. And then they shall take the blood and strike it upon the two side doorposts on the upper doorposts of their houses in which they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh when? At night. Okay, at night. Roasted with fire and unleavened bread and with bitter herbs, they shall eat it. Eat none of it raw, none of it cooked, nor cooked, or boiled at all with water, but roasted with fire. Its head with its legs and its inside parts. And you shall let nothing it remain until morning. And it shall remain until morning shall you burn it with fire. And this is how you shall eat it, with your loins dressed, your shoes on your feet, and your staff on your hand. And you shall eat it in a great hurry. It is Yahushua Peshach. For I will pass through the land of Mitzrayim this night, and will smite all the male firstborns in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast, and against all the Elohims of Mitzrayim I will execute judgment. I am Yahuwah. Now, during each Passover, thereafter, the story of the Exodus when the Pharaohs kept them as slaves and were rescued by Yahuwah was a remembrance spoken through generations thereafter during this event. So it was so this was the time, right, between the twilight. Okay. So you have here the sacrifice. They had plenty of time, you know, and they had to put the blood over the post. You know, we know that Yahuwah came at midnight. Okay, they had all night to be able to even get rid of and burn the lamb before they left. Okay. Now these are all the things that did happen. We have killed the lamb between the mixtures, strike the blood upon the doorpost. Okay. Roast the lamb with herbs over the fire. Prepare the unleavened, eat the unleavened bread. Well, prepare the unleavened bread. They were supposed to prepare the unleavened bread, but they had to leave in haste, right? As you recall, they left right before the bread was even leavened. As it reads on Exodus 12:39, and they baked the unleavened cakes of dough which they had brought out of Egypt. For it was not leavened, because they were not given out of Egypt, and they could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. So all this was done in a very short amount of time. This was the special Passover. Okay, and then we have the eating of the lamb at night. All the remains had to be burned before the morning. They had to be prepared with shoes and staff on hand. And then Yahuwah had to pass through to judge that night. That happened at midnight, right? Okay. Now, these are the parallels of the Lamb and Yahusha. We have, and I'll start off with Hebrews 1:10. For the Torah has a shadow of good things to come. Does it not, right? The Torah has a shadow of good things to come. So while we have the Torah, Yahuwah already gives us a roadmap, or a like we were talking about. He is the best logistics operator in our lives. So he knows how everything works, how everything is going to be, but he gives us foreshadows of how those things will be because of the things that have been done. And then it reads, and not every image of the things can never, with those sacrifices which are offered year by year continually, make those who draw near perfect. The Torah is prophetic, and it can tell us those things that Yahuwah had to fulfill. Okay. Again, on Colossians 2:16, talking about the feast, the moeds, which are shadow of things to come, right? Except the Israelite body of Moshiach. So, the moedims, agricultural, and some are cultural moedims, can help us have a roadmap in our lives and prophetic, circumstances. And so we have here the crucified on the 14th day of the first month, and sacrifice on Abib 14. They led Yahusha from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was in the morning. And then later on it says, but they might eat Passover. So as you can see, they were going to be eating Passover before Yahusha was even crucified. Okay. And then you have Exodus 12:6, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. You can see here the sacrifice had to be on Abib 14, because Yahusha even fulfilled not only the lamb ordinances, but he fulfilled all the oxes and all the animals, even the red heifer, all that. He was able to fulfill all of it, through in his ministry and through his final sacrifice. So you got 1 Peter 1:19, the precious blood of Moshiach, a lamb without blemish or spot. 2 Corinthians 5:21, sin sacrifice for us. He knew no sin. Exodus 12:5, the lamb must be an unblemished year-old male, and you shall make it from the sheep and on the goats. Again, we have without flaw and without sin. Matthew 1:21, and this has to do with the sacrifice being a male. She will give birth to a son. Your animal must be without defect, a male sacrifice. We have your Romans 5:8, but Yahuwah demonstrates his love for us in the Moshiach, died in our behalf while we were still sinners. The assembly of the community of Israel was slaughtered at dusk. A death was necessary. Then we have here on John 19:36, for these things were done that the scriptures should be fulfilled. Not one of his bones shall be broken. Well, he fulfilled that as well. Exodus 12:6, you shall not take any of the meat outside the house, and you shall not break any of his bones. No bones were broken. There are more. I mean, there's a lot more, but I just wanted to give you some of the ones that have to do with the lamb. So you have John 19:31, because it was their preparation day, the bodies should not remain on the cross or on the tree on the Shabbat. Like I said, it's 12:10, you shall let none of it remain until morning. What remains until morning, you shall burn it with fire. So no leftovers. Romans 5:9, much much more truth. Much more than have now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and I will see the blood and I will pass over you. So salvation through the blood. So we saw that as well. I just really have one more slide after this and we'll conclude it. So Brandon can go ahead and get going with his presentation. And there, like I said, there's more, I mean, Yahusha had to be sacrificed outside the camp. Leviticus, 17:3 attests to that. You have also the Jews, I'm sorry, the Moshiach was taken to the slaughter with, he was quiet, he did not open his mouth as Isaiah prophesied he was going to do, so like a lamb, is taken to the slaughter. Acts confirms that 8:32, where he was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and the lamb silent before his shearer, so he did not open his mouth. So you have so many things happen. The atonement for our sins, all of it, and it all happened according to Torah. So it was a blessing. So the last slide here is going to, you're going to see the correlations between the Passover and sacrifice commandments and Yahusha's death and through the crucifixion. So we have here, I'll first start off with 1 Corinthians 5:7. Therefore, purge out of the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, since you are truly unleavened. For indeed, Moshiach, our Passover, was sacrificed for us. Okay, so he is our Passover, is he not? So what do we have here? We have the dawn. This is right around before the Peter also, was prophesied that he would deny Yahusha 3 times when the cock crowed 3 times. And then you have the dawn time. This is when the day began. As you can see on John 9:13, the Passover is when it began on the 6th hour. Okay, now this is a Roman calendar time, so just keep that in mind. This is not Hebrew calendar club time. As those who have been in studies, you know that John's book was actually, he was using Roman calendar. Like he was speaking to a Hellenistic audience, because he knew that they already had the other synoptic gospels, so he just wanted to give them a different perspective that they could understand through the time they were keeping, because they were under Roman ruling at that time. All right, so we have here Mark 5:25, which is at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is when Yahusha was crucified. Okay. This also, as you recall, the daily sacrifices were done when? In the morning. Yahusha also was able to fulfill that, okay, on this day. The daily sacrifice. Yahusha sacrificed his day, every single day he sacrificed his life for others. Did he not? And this is what we should do. We also have at midnight, at the midday point, what happened? The sun, I mean, it went black. It went black, you know. So this is the 12 hour, you know, when the 3 hours of darkness started. All right. So we have here the midday when, as the sun, you know, you could say this is the part where Yahusha, was still in the tree, and he lifted up, and he was recognized. He prophesied that he was going to be known to be the Son of Man when he was taken up. So this is when he was taken up in the tree, and people could see him up there. Even his death was glorified. Even his death was glorified because he was taken up. All right, so now we have here and the night portion. So as you can see here, we had 3 hours of daylight, 3 hours at nighttime. So Yahusha, when did he die? He died at 3 p.m. Just when, there was darkness and there was light mixing. I mean, it's like, it's incredible. He's like, just because of this happening here, he even fulfilled, the Beyn Ha Arbayim, in a supernatural way, he even was a sacrificial lamb for the day and during the darkness as well, which is amazing. And he died right there. And it's funny because he happened to be right in the mixing part. And anyway, it's just amazing how Yahusha does. Yahuwah was able to reveal these things in his son. And then, as you all know, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate to bring the body down because none also was to be left, right? During the nighttime as well. So another, prophetic thing that was actually fulfilled in Yahusha. And also no man is to be left on a tree over the night. And this also, as you can see, Daniel, it was prophesied to Daniel that Yahusha was to be putting it into sacrifice at the middle of the week. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and conclude this study, and I hope you all were blessed and edified by it. We'll continue to study these things out, and hopefully Yahuwah will just keep revealing this wonderful, nuggets that he left for us to find. All right, well, blessings to all.